Nobody at Nexora Technologies ever thought twice about the empty boxes Clara Evans carried out each night, until a millionaire did. And what he found in those boxes was the last thing anyone expected. Clara had been cleaning these floors for 3 years. She knew which conference room had a sticky spot near the east window, which executive hid candy wrappers behind his monitor. She knew which bathroom stall had a hinge nobody ever fixed. She knew it from the underside, from what others left behind. Not with affection, but with the sharp clarity of someone the building had never bothered to hide itself from. It was past midnight when she started her second sweep of the fourth-floor break room. The recycling bin near the printer station was full again. There were flattened shipping boxes, warped from a leaking windowsill, stacked like discarded intentions. Most were thick, corrugated cardboard, the kind that held its shape even after you pressed it flat. Clara looked at them for a moment. Then she folded the 3 best ones carefully, tucked them under her arm alongside her cleaning caddy, and moved toward the service elevator. She had been doing this for months. Nobody had ever said a word. The elevator opened on the lobby level at 2:14 in the morning, and the first thing Clara saw was Victoria Lang. Victoria was 36, sharp-featured, overnight operations supervisor, a title she exercised with a seriousness that had always struck Clara as slightly off-scale for the role. She was standing near the front desk with 2 security guards and Pamela from the day shift. Anthony leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, already looking entertained. "Ms. Evans." "Ms. Lang, I need you to set down what you're carrying. These are from the recycling bin on 4. They were going to be thrown. Set them down, please." The please landed like a door closing. Clara set the boxes on the floor. Victoria nodded at the security guard, Derek, a young man Clara had always found reasonable. He didn't look at her now. "Badge." "I don't understand what's happening," Clara said. Her voice was even. She had spent her whole life keeping it even in situations that didn't deserve it. "There have been reports of items going missing. Office supplies. A USB drive. Last week, a watch." A deliberate pause. "I am required to conduct an inspection." From the wall, barely audible, "I lost that watch last Tuesday." Pamela's voice. "Been wondering." The accusation didn't need to be stated. It hung in the lobby air like smoke. Clara felt the specific burn, not shame, just the heat of knowing exactly what this was and being unable to stop it. She unclipped her badge. Derek took it without meeting her eyes. "Empty your bag. And the boxes." Clara crouched down. Spray bottles, a folded rag, a route notebook, a granola bar, worn cotton gloves. She turned the caddy upside down. Nothing fell out. Then she picked up the boxes. The first 2 unfolded easily. Blank corrugated cardboard, nothing inside. The third resisted. She had reinforced its corners with masking tape, sealed the bottom to hold its shape. When she pulled it open, a small piece of salvaged circuitry, no larger than a matchbook, attached with Velcro, caught the motion and activated. A voice came out, soft, female. A woman singing in Spanish, low and unhurried, the kind of song that belongs to a kitchen at night. "Duérmete, mi niño. Duérmete sonriendo." The lobby went completely still. 4 seconds. Then the mechanism clicked off, and the silence came back heavier, more confused. Victoria looked at the box, then at Clara, then lifted her heel and brought it down. The box crumpled under her stiletto, the Velcro tore, the circuit board cracked, the masking tape peeled back like a wound. "This is what you have been stealing from us?" Victoria's expression sharpened into something worse than anger. Cold, confident amusement. "You are so poor you steal our trash, Ms. Evans?" Pamela laughed. Anthony looked toward the window, but the corner of his mouth was up. Clara stayed crouched on the floor. The circuit board was split in two. The voice. Rose's voice. The woman from the fourth-floor laundry service who had recorded that lullaby for her daughter on her lunch break was gone. She gathered the pieces, deliberately, without hurrying, because hurrying would have given them something. "You are suspended pending review, effective immediately." Clara stood. She did not look at Pamela or Anthony. She did not look at Derek, who was studying his shoes. She looked at Victoria. Not with anger, not with tears, but with something steadier and harder to dismiss. Then she walked toward the door. She did not know that parked across the street, half hidden under a delivery awning, a black SUV sat idling in the dark. That the man in the back seat had been in the building earlier that evening. He had heard something through an open stairwell door and had been standing at the edge of the lobby corridor for the last 4 minutes, watching everything unfold. That he was still watching as she pushed through the glass door into the cold Seattle night, broken boxes pressed against her chest like something worth saving. The apartment on Dewey Street was 18 square meters. It was 18 square meters of stubborn life. The walls were peeling at the corners in long strips Clara had stopped trying to fix. The kitchen counter was a door balanced on 2 sawhorses. The table was built from stacking crates found in an alley near Pike Place, sanded smooth. A single lamp with a warm bulb cast the whole space in the color of early evening. It was the only light that made the room feel like anything other than what it was. She got home at 3:20 and did not turn on the overhead. She set the broken box on the table, the other 2 beside it, and sat in the chair facing the window. For a long moment, she just watched the rain move down the glass. The knock came at 4:05. "Ms. Evans!" The landlord, Mr. Dolan. He was in his 60s, precise about money in the way that people become when they don't have much of it to spare. "3rd month's notice. Friday at the latest." "I know. Thank you, Mr. Dolan." She stayed at the table, then she reached for the box. The circuit board was cracked but not destroyed. The main solder point had held. She kept a small soldering iron under the sink. It was bought at a surplus store 2 years ago, alongside a coil of wire no thicker than thread. She worked by feel more than sight. The lamp angled low. The Velcro she could replace. The masking tape she had plenty of. Each box took between 40 minutes and 2 hours to build. She had learned the circuitry from YouTube tutorials, library books, and 3 patient conversations. She had conversations with a retired engineer named Harold, who came every Tuesday to the community center on Mercer Street, where Clara volunteered on her nights off. The recordings she collected herself. She asked the mothers, women who came through the center, who worked double shifts and overnight routes, and arrived with the exhaustion you see in women who have been going. They had been going since before their children could walk. If they would sing something. A lullaby. A song their own mother had sung. Most cried a little, then sang anyway. She recorded the voices on her phone, transferred them to the circuit boards, sealed them inside the boxes. When a child lifted the lid in the dark, a mother's voice came out, not from a phone screen. It came from a box, not from a phone screen or a speaker with a passcode. Something that felt, to a 7-year-old, like something their mother had made and put somewhere safe. It had started long before the center, long before Seattle. She had a sister, Maya, 12 years old when their mother died, and Clara had been 22 and working, already gone most nights. Maya was afraid of the dark in the specific way that only children who have lost a parent understand. Not afraid of shadows, but afraid of quiet, of what quiet meant now that it meant absence. By the time Clara understood what was happening, Maya had stopped sleeping, then stopped eating, and then one winter, gone in ways that didn't leave marks you could point to. It left marks nonetheless. 20 years, and she had never found the right shape for what she owed Maya. The boxes were what she could do now. She worked until just before 5, when her hands began to shake from fatigue. The broken box was repaired, not perfectly, but the voice was intact. She tested it once, tilting the lid, and Rosa's voice came back into the room, soft and certain. Duérmete, mi niño. And she sat with it a moment before closing the lid. She put her head down on her arms and slept. Marcus Hale had a reputation at Nexora Technologies for being unavailable. Not unkind, that distinction mattered to him, but unavailable. He answered emails at midnight, arrived for board meetings 90 seconds early. He maintained across every professional interaction a practiced distance that read as focus. His COO had once described him to a journalist as a man who paid attention to everything and explained himself to no one. He was also, on the third Wednesday after the lobby incident, sitting on the floor of his own executive suite at 11:30 at night, completely at a loss, while his 5-year-old son screamed. Ethan had been doing this for 7 months, since before the diagnosis, since before the specialists, since before the parade of professionals who each used different language to describe the same fact, that a 5-year-old who loses his mother loses something no amount of money or expertise can replace. The panic attacks came most often at night, sometimes triggered by sound, sometimes by nothing at all. Just the dark and what a room feels like when the person who used to fill it is gone. The overnight Manny Janet had exhausted her toolkit. Ethan was behind the couch, knees to his chest, alternating between hard, gasping sobs and frantic movement. He was throwing whatever was within reach: a stuffed animal, a board book, the couch pillow, his own shoes. Janet had gently suggested Ethan needed his father, not a phone. Marcus understood she was right, and still sat there with one hand on his son's back, feeling precisely helpless. He heard it before he understood what he was hearing. Low, unhurried, coming from down the hall, past the glass-walled conference room, a woman's voice, somewhere between singing and humming, the unself-conscious kind. No performance in it, just sound moving through someone who had somewhere to put it. Ethan stopped crying. Not gradually, almost immediately. One moment trembling, the next still, his head tilting toward the hallway with the wide, unfocused look children get when sound means more to them than sight. Marcus didn't move, didn't breathe. 2 minutes of humming. The tension in Ethan's shoulder moved from rigid to slack. His breathing slowed. One small hand wrapped around the edge of his blanket, and his eyes, fighting it as they always did, as if sleep were still something to be afraid of, closed. Just like that. Marcus waited until he was certain. Then he moved to the doorway. Down the hall, a woman in a gray uniform ran a wide mop along the corridor in slow, steady arcs. She wasn't looking up, didn't notice him. Still humming, softer now, more breath than melody. He recognized her. He had seen the lobby footage 2 weeks ago, read Victoria's HR report, felt doubt move through him, not strong enough to act on, not small enough to dismiss, and set it aside for a Singapore call and a board presentation. He hadn't delegated it yet. He watched her work, unhurried, entirely present, doing the job she came here to do, and in the process doing something else entirely, without knowing anyone was watching. Marcus Hale had built a company on the premise that the most important information is usually the thing you find by accident. He went back inside, sat beside his sleeping son, looked at the ceiling for a long time. The access suspension was reversed 24 hours after it was issued. Clara received a terse HR email, apologetic in the way companies are apologetic when they fear liability rather than feel sorry, informing her the investigation had found no grounds and that she could resume her schedule. Nobody mentioned the lobby. Nobody mentioned the watch, which Pamela had apparently found in her own car. Victoria said nothing when Clara returned, but she noticed the email. And she noticed something else. Marcus arriving late on nights Clara was scheduled. Ethan, who had been a source of visible tension in the building for months, becoming calmer, quieter. The child, unprompted, stopping twice in the hallway when he heard Clara's cart, standing there with the trusting attention of a small animal. He had decided something is safe. Victoria was not sentimental, but she was perceptive. Something she didn't understand had begun arranging itself in this building without her knowledge or consent. She began to pay attention. The tracking device was small, a coin-cell GPS unit, the kind sold in bulk for asset monitoring. She had requested 2 from facilities 6 weeks ago, listed as inventory management tools. One went to a supply cart on floor 6, legitimately. The second she placed, on a Tuesday night, in a small cardboard tray near Clara's workstation in the basement storage room. 3 days later, when Ethan's regular device couldn't be located, security ran the backup. It returned the basement storage room address, specifically, a shelf 12 inches from Clara's spare cleaning supplies. The search was brief and conducted in front of HR witnesses. Clara looked at the device the way she'd looked at the lobby floor, with confusion so complete it had to be real, or was crafted well enough that the distinction didn't matter. I do not own anything like this. I have never seen it. It was found in your area. Anyone has access to that room. A beat. Is Ethan okay? Is the boy all right? That stopped the room. An unusual question, given the circumstances. The HR representative made a note. Pamela's version traveled faster than the official report. By Thursday, obsessed had been used. By the following week, people who had barely registered Clara Evans in 3 years were watching her with the flat, cataloging attention of people who have already made up their minds. Clara felt it. The hallway had a different texture now, and she could sense it before she could name it. She cleaned her floors, filed her routes, smiled at Ethan when she saw him. Because the boy had done nothing wrong, and because there was something in his eyes, tired, searching, the look of a child trying to find something he can't describe, that she recognized without being able to say where from. She did not know that Marcus had reviewed the tracker's security logs and found a timestamp that didn't align with her schedule, that he had pulled the facility's equipment log and seen Victoria's requisition, that he had said nothing to anyone, but sat at his desk for a long time, staring at a screen that had gone dark, thinking. Some things you watch, some things you follow. He had learned that in his 20s, running his first startup out of a borrowed server room. You learn to tell the difference between the person who is the problem and the person who is convenient to blame for it. You learn it or you don't last. Marcus Hale had lasted. He followed her on a Thursday. He told himself it was due diligence. He drove his own car, kept 2 car lengths back, and felt mildly ridiculous about both choices. Clara took the number 8 bus from the building's south parking structure. She carried a canvas bag over one shoulder and a larger tote that clinked softly when she moved. He parked on the far side of Mercer Street and watched her walk half a block to a building he had driven past 100 times without registering. The Mercer Street Community Resource Center. It was a converted storefront surviving on grants and volunteer hours. The sign was hand-painted. Through the front window, low tables, mismatched chairs, flat, fluorescent light. He got out of the car. Through the glass, he watched Clara set her bags on the far table. 6 or 7 children were already there, ranging from about 4 to 12. Some were alert, some drowsy with the comfort of somewhere familiar. Clara reached into the canvas bag and pulled out 4 boxes, different sizes, each covered in carefully cut paper. Small flowers on one, a blue sky pattern on another, geometric shapes on the third, and hand-trimmed stars on the fourth, cut individually from old wrapping paper. A girl of about 8, dark-haired, shirt faded from washing, stood and walked to Clara with the deliberate pace of someone who has been waiting for this moment for a while. He couldn't hear the words through the glass, but he watched the girl take one of the boxes, hold it, both hands, careful, like it might change its mind, then lift the lid, and whatever came out made her face do something he hadn't expected. Not joy exactly, something older than that and more durable. She sat down on the floor right there, cross-legged, pressed her ear to the lid. He watched Clara give the remaining 3 boxes to 3 other children. Each reacted differently. A small boy who held his box as if it were heavy. A teenager who pretended not to care and then turned to face the wall with his head bowed and shoulders slowly releasing. An older girl who put her hand over her mouth. Marcus stood on the sidewalk for a long time. After most of the children had settled, Clara pulled out 3 unfinished boxes. She spread her toolkit across the table. Soldering iron, wire, Velcro strips. She bent over her work, completely absorbed, the lamp making a circle of warm light over her hands. She worked like that for 2 hours. He filmed for perhaps 3 minutes, not to show anyone, but because he needed to be certain this was real, that this was what the boxes were. Near the end of the 2nd hour, passing the small wicker donation basket by the front door, he stopped. $12 in it. A handwritten sign. Your donation helps us buy recording supplies. He reached into his jacket. $600 in cash, folded and placed in the basket. Then he picked up one of the blank, unassembled boxes Clara had set aside. He picked it up from the supply shelf and placed it gently beside the money. A new box, flat and clean, ready to be built. No name, no word to the volunteer at the front desk. He walked back to his car and sat in the dark before starting the engine. He sat longer than necessary. The thing he felt was the feeling of having gotten something profoundly wrong. It was not about Clara, but about where he had been directing his attention for the last 3 years of his life. The story Victoria told was this. Clara Evans had been distributing recording devices to vulnerable children in an unsupervised environment. Devices built from materials removed from company property, containing audio of unknown origin. These were used to create emotional dependencies in children whose parents had not consented. She presented this on a Monday morning to the center's board of parent volunteers. She brought printed screenshots from a parenting forum where someone had posted about strange audio boxes at a community center. She had a formatted document with footnotes. She cited 3 studies on psychological manipulation in early childhood. Where the forum post had come from was not discussed. By Monday afternoon, 4 parents had pulled their children from the program. By Tuesday, 9. By Wednesday, the center's acting director, retired schoolteacher Mrs. Briggs, who had run the place for 11 years. She was sitting across from Clara with red eyes and a letter she'd clearly been revising all morning. The board wants to pause the program, just until the questions are resolved. I'm so sorry, Clara. I know. The recording permissions. The parents signed them. I have them all. But the framing of what's being claimed. Mrs. Briggs? I know. She left that afternoon. On Thursday, Nexora HR sent a second email. The pending review, the one from the lobby, supposedly resolved, had been reopened. Suspended without pay, effective immediately. Badge deactivated until further notice. 2 paragraphs, signed by a name she didn't recognize. She walked home from the bus stop in the rain. The eviction notice was taped to her door. Formal, stamped, dated. Mr. Dolan had given her every extension he could. She understood. She stood at the door with the notice in her hand, rain running off her coat, and thought with the flat, exhausted clarity of someone who has run out of room to be surprised. So this is what it looks like. She went inside, changed her clothes, packed what she could into 2 bags. Then she went back for the boxes. 11 of them on the shelf above the table. Finished, sealed, waiting. She laid them carefully into the large tote bag. She was stepping out when the rain picked up, the soft Seattle drizzle becoming something heavier, arriving in sheets. She pulled the bag against her chest. Something gave. A small tear in the bottom seam. She'd known about it, meant to fix it. The weight, the wet, the step down to the sidewalk, and the seam opened. The boxes fell. She went to her knees on the wet concrete and gathered them, but the rain was fast, the cardboard already softening. She could feel the water working through the walls of each box. She pressed them all against her chest, kneeling on a sidewalk at 11:30 at night, outside an apartment she no longer had. She held on. But the water found its way. First box, tilted the lid. Nothing. Second. Nothing. Third. Fourth. Nothing. The 5th was an older one, better sealed. She held it to her ear, and there was a voice. Barely. Half dissolved by the wet. A woman singing a fragment, and then static, and then silence. She sat back on her heels. The rain came down. Just a woman alone on a sidewalk, holding ruined cardboard, understanding that she had been taken apart so completely, there wasn't even anyone watching to see it happen. Her arms went slack. The boxes rested in her lap. She had held on through the lobby floor, the tracker accusation, Pamela's voice carrying down the hallway, the emails and the eviction notice, and every small diminishment applied to her life with the casual confidence of people who believe certain diminishments are simply facts. She let go, just for a moment, just the length of a breath. But it was the first time in her adult life that she had. The all-staff meeting was called for Friday morning, 10 o'clock, main auditorium, 3rd floor. Victoria had requested it, framed as a matter of workplace safety and ethics, a review of an ongoing personnel issue with implications for community partnerships. Careful language. Precisely vague. The kind of institutional framing that makes everything feel necessary and formal, and therefore not personal. 47 people in the room. Most knew something. All knew to be watching. Clara had been asked to attend. No explanation, just that her presence was required. She came because she had nothing left to protect. She was too tired, finally, to be afraid of it. She stood near the back wall, still in her coat. She had not slept. Victoria walked the room through the timeline with the confidence of someone who has rehearsed this moment into certainty. The lobby incident, the tracker, the community center reports, the suspension. Each item framed carefully. She was never accusing directly, always implying, always arriving at the same destination. She concluded, "I have footage that speaks to Ms. Evans's conduct, which I believe will bring this matter the clarity it requires." The screen changed to a video player. Victoria clicked play. The room waited. What appeared was not what Victoria had loaded. Security camera footage. Third-floor hallway, time-stamped across several nights. In the first clip, a woman in a gray uniform sat cross-legged on the corridor floor during her break, a small cardboard box in her lap, circuit board and wire cutters in hand, working by the light of her phone screen. Second clip, the lobby before her shift. She was carefully refolding a damaged box, movements absorbed and unhurried. Third clip, the hallway outside the executive suite, visible through glass, still, barely moving, humming, while a small boy on the other side of the door slowly, visibly, stopped crying. 47 people watched. Nobody laughed. The room was very quiet. That is not the file I loaded." "No," Marcus said. "It is not." He was in the second row. He stood and the room recalibrated. Chairs angled slightly, postures straightened, attention sharpened. He spoke quietly, which required everyone to lean in. "I replaced the file. Wednesday evening. Security footage from the building's own archive. What you just watched is what has actually been happening in this building." He let that sit. There is a separate investigation underway into the origin of a community forum post and into a facility's requisition for GPS tracking devices that does not align with the purpose they were used for. He looked at Victoria briefly, then away. "HR will be in contact with the relevant parties." Victoria said nothing. She had the expression of someone watching a calculation come apart in real time. Marcus walked to the front of the room. Near the base of the projection screen, pushed aside during setup, was a flattened piece of cardboard. A fragment, Clara recognized from across the room. It was a fragment of the box Victoria had crushed the night of the lobby incident. Still here. Overlooked for weeks. Marcus knelt down and picked it up. He held it in both hands, the torn corner, the ghost of a flower pattern drawn in marker, paper trimmed by hand. Then he turned to face the room. "We threw away the most valuable thing in this building, and we did not notice until it was already gone. That is not a personnel issue." He set the fragment on the projector table, without ceremony, but without carelessness either. "That is a failure of attention." The room did not applaud. What happened instead was something more durable. 47 people sitting with the discomfort of those who have just watched. Those who had laughed 3 weeks ago were no longer laughing. Several were no longer looking up. Clara had not moved from the back wall. She looked at the fragment on the table, at the screen, where her own face, tired, intent, unaware of the camera, was still visible. at the room full of people who had been laughing, or silent in the way. It was the same as laughing. She thought about Rosa's voice dissolving in the rain, about the girl who had pressed her ear to the lid and made the face that was not quite joy, something older than that and more durable. She was not crying. She had thought, perhaps, that she would be, but she was still standing. She had come in with nothing left to protect. She was leaving with something she hadn't arrived with. Something that had existed in her all along, but needed 47 witnesses and a man kneeling on a floor with a piece of broken cardboard to make it real. She was still here. The community center reopened on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after it closed. It opened with twice as many tables. The announcement ran through Nexora's company newsletter, an unusual item, authored by Marcus Hale directly, announcing a corporate partnership with the Mercer Street Community Resource Center and the launch of what he called the Heard Project, a funded initiative to distribute Clara's recording boxes to children in working family shelters. It was for hospital pediatric wards and after-school programs across the city. The tone was dry and factual, which was Marcus's way, but the final line read, "The program was invented by a member of our staff who has been doing it alone without resources for 3 years. We are correcting that." Clara read it twice before she believed it. She had been asked to return in a different capacity, not as the person who cleaned the floors, though she had asked half seriously whether she could still do that sometimes, and the question had made something shift in Marcus's expression. Not quite a smile, but close enough. She would lead the Heard Project. Scale the boxes up while keeping them. Scale the boxes up while keeping them what they were. Handmade, specific, human. One box at a time. She said yes before she fully understood what she was agreeing to. She was still getting used to that, being asked. On the first morning, she arrived before anyone else. Same toolkit, same lamp angled low. She was sealing corners when the door opened. A woman from 4th floor accounting, someone Clara had passed 100 times without speaking to, stood in the doorway, holding a coffee cup and a small piece of paper. "My son cannot sleep," she said. No preamble, just the fact, which is how you speak about things that truly matter. "My number's on the paper. I will call you today. Would you be willing to record something for him?" "You mean my voice?" "Just a song. It does not have to be perfect." "I cannot really sing." "That is all right," Clara said. "They do not care about the singing. They just need to know you are real." The woman laughed, surprised out of her, short and genuine. She left her number and walked out. Clara added it to her notebook. Anthony came by later that week. He stood in the doorway a long time before coming in. He had a daughter, it turned out, 7 years old. He had been carrying that fact around the building for 3 years, the way people carry things they have decided they should not need help with. He set a folded piece of paper on the table without quite making eye contact. "She has been having a hard time since her mom and I..." He stopped. "I just thought, maybe." "Sit down," Clara said. "Tell me her name." He sat down. He told her. Clara wrote the name in her notebook. He apologized eventually, halting, over-rehearsed. Clara accepted it without pressing. Because the apology was not really the point. The point was that he was here, across a table covered in cardboard and wire, asking for something real. She helped him. That was also real. Thursday evening, end of the first full week back, Ethan arrived. Marcus had been bringing him twice a week since the reopening. Ethan came with his small knapsack and the focused energy of a 5-year-old who has decided he belongs somewhere. He spent his visits carrying cardboard from one end of the table to the other, applying stickers with great seriousness to boxes that didn't need them, occasionally wrapping both arms around Clara's arm and staying there like a barnacle. He was comfortable and entirely certain of his welcome. Tonight, he came in holding something behind his back. "What have you got?" He brought it out. A box, smaller than her usual ones, assembled from cereal cardboard, the seams held with most of a roll of Scotch tape. On the outside, in red crayon, a drawing that might have been a person or a house, and below it, in partly legible letters, Clara. "Dad helped with the inside part," he said seriously, "but I did the outside myself." Clara held the box, tilted the lid. His voice came out, small, echoey, phone microphone held too close. "This is Ethan. Clara helps me sleep. I made this for her because she makes things for people. Bye." A pause. Then, faintly, a second voice, lower, steady. "Did I do it right?" "Yeah, buddy. You did it right." She pressed the lid closed. She did not look up for a moment. She breathed carefully, the way you breathe when you are trying to keep something from spilling. Ethan watched her with the grave attention of someone waiting to find out whether a gift landed correctly. She looked at him, set the box down, and held out her arms. He crossed the distance at the speed children move when they have been waiting for permission. She held him and did not let go quickly. "I sleep now," he said into her shoulder, matter of fact, as if sleep were simply a problem that had been solved. "Because you are here, that is why." Across the room, Marcus stood near the door. The stillness of a man who has stopped pretending he is somewhere else. Not performing anything, not sentiment, not distance. Just present, in the room he had chosen to be in. He did not say anything. He did not need to. Later, after Ethan had fallen asleep on a folded blanket under the corner table, after the last volunteer had gone home and the center had grown quiet, Clara sat alone with her lamp and her toolkit and the next row of boxes waiting to be built. She picked up the first one, plain cardboard, waiting. She thought about Maya. She thought about Rose's voice dissolving in the rain, about the lobby floor and the piece of box crushed under a stiletto heel, and a man kneeling on a floor, holding a fragment of cardboard as if it were worth holding. She thought about the girl who had pressed her ear to the lid and made the face that was not quite joy, something older than that, and more durable. She picked up the soldering iron. She got to work. There is a woman the world forgets to notice. She does not ask to be seen. She asks only to be useful. She turns the discarded things into something that holds, fills them with what love sounds like, and gives them away. If you have ever been that woman, if you have ever done something real and quiet and unrewarded and gone home wondering why you bother, this story is for you. You were never invisible. You were simply surrounded by people who had not yet learned how to look. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about a quiet kindness you have witnessed or received. And if you are still waiting to be seen, keep going. The boxes carry your voice. They always have.